Greetings, friends! Welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we look at movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. I'm your host, Josh Griffey, joined tonight by my dark mother in a neighborly mother skin suit and co-host,
Alex Dandino.
He's the most wretched. He's the most... I thought it would sound more Ozzy, but that kind of sounded Matchbox 20.
That's a little Celine Dion-ish even. Like, just not hard at all.
We can build the shit. Never mind. We could just do a whole other pod on that where I just sing songs to you about horror movies and like 80s power ballads. That's neither here nor there, though. We're here for important business. All right, guys, as always, if you're joining us here, we hope you love the show. If that's the case, please take a second and leave us a rating and review wherever you find the show. It helps us out so much. I really can't stress this enough. And for the people who've done it, we really appreciate it a lot. Every time we get a new one, it just fills us with jubilation. So thank you. Also on that note, guys, if you like the show, share us on the socials. We got socials. You got all the socials. Share us with your friends. Give a quick shout out so, some of your other movie-loving friends, horror-loving friends can come join the fun with us. On social media, you can also get a hold of us. And also, you can email us at filmalchemistpod@gmail.com with your suggestions for movies you'd like us to cover, new and old, themes, double features, guest hosts you'd like us to try to get on the show. Anything you want to hear us talk about, we would love to try to do that for you. So help us out with that. Also, you can see our faces, maybe our faces. You'll have to check our shower cams to be sure. The newest feature coming to our YouTube page.
Yes.
The Nerd Alchemist.
All ring episode one time.
Yeah. I mean, just in case anyone's like, I want to see how that guy even showers. That's a lot of loofahing. But neither here nor there. So Nerd Alchemist, all right, it's already gotten weird, but what do you expect when the Wretched's invading our normal lives, the intimacies of our normal lives? So, Alex, I've been on the Wretched for a while. I've been hoping that we would get to this for a while, and we found a time to do it. So, guys, you can find the Wretched. Please spend the money to rent this movie or buy this movie. There are other ways to find it, too. It's a very, very fun movie. What I love about this movie is the Wretched is essentially the movie that I feel like I find the Wretched a lot. Not necessarily this good, right? But I watch a lot of movies that are really small, indie, low-budget horror films.
Yeah.
They kind of come and go. They get lost in the deluge of streaming. You might hear them pop up on Twitter every now and again. This was a really good hidden gem, blah, blah, blah. This one, because of the unusual nature of 2020, right? This movie got some massive run. I think you were telling me this movie was #1 in the American box office for 6 weeks in a row.
This movie ties one other movie in history for this run, which is Avatar. Avatar and The Wretched are the only two movies to have a 6-week run at #1.
Is that true?
That is a true fact that I read online somewhere. Now, that could be disputed, but nevertheless...
I guess I'm shocked on two folds. One, I thought Avatar was #1 at the box office for like 6 months. That movie felt like it just never went away. But neither here nor there, right?
It was the first film since Avatar to top the box office for 6 weeks.
But what is cool about that, right, is this was a micro-budget film. And when you watch the movie, you would not be able to tell it. The practical effects are unbelievable. Supremely well shot. The score is good. The acting is good, right? So this movie was made for so little, suffers none of those kind of micro-budget problems that you would expect, has an amazing monster, great mythology, great characters, and it went out, and because the cinemas were shut down at drive-thrus and, whatever screens it could find, actually now is going to be this film that gets some clout that I feel like it wouldn't have gotten. And so to me, the success story of just that makes this movie fascinating. Alex, what was your initial takeaway and thoughts on The Wretched?
I mean, the initial... I picked this one because we had a pool of 5, I swear to God, of movies that were hey, we should throw one of these in that's coming out, one of these lower budget ones, especially ones that have been sort of caught in this upheaval of pandemicness. But I was let's do The Wretched. My initial, it was I was slow. And I think for me, because of the beginning, I thought it was going to go a little faster and be a little more, I would call top heavy, as some of these seem to be. But I think as the movie went on and as the story kind of evolved, sorry, not devolved, I appreciated sort of the slow burn. I think I like, and the practical effects are excellent. I mean, this has some of the best. If this movie was made for $66,000, I'm going to say if only let's say 10,000 of it went towards sound design, that guy deserves a fucking Oscar as far as I'm concerned, because I've never been more grossed out and terrified simultaneously by crunching sounds in my entire life.
I mean, the makeup department, effect, everyone, if that's how much they spent on this movie, good. And I didn't research enough to know if they got some budget perhaps for some, that's like the old Paranormal Activity. I think they're it was like $100,000 to $200,000 movie. But then they spent $3 million at the studio after they had bought it to reshoot the ending and do all
there's
the marketing.
There's always marketing costs and all that other shit that tax onto the original budget. But
let's say it even ballooned up to, because that's what I was telling you. I was if you had told me this was $1 million movie, I would have been yeah, for sure. Because the effects are that good.
Yeah.
The body horror they pull off in this film is stunning. So besides just the technical and money part, I actually found myself, I loved the lore of this movie, right? And I think this movie I was trying to think of parallels to this film, and it had this really cool Fright Night vibe to me, right? But Fright Night's a little more, it kind of is aware of itself a little more, has a little more comedy elements, right? But I love this idea of the kid who's next door. He's made some mistakes in his life. He's kind of figuring out who he is, so he's not trustworthy enough to be believed when he, Rear Window style, just happens to see this horrific event unfolding. And so there's this dual layer, or there's a 3-layer that this works on, right? Is one, that no one believes him because of his past mistakes. And he's not a bad kid all the way. I think you can argue by the end of the movie he does some pretty shithead things. Not apologizing to Sara, you fuck.
You fucking dick. Who's very cool, by the way.
Yeah, and also he's just I won't go back to the awesome girl with the greatest sock collection ever, because I want to skinny dip with, indie Megan Fox. I was what are you doing over here? So anyways, that's neither here nor there, right? He had some drug problems, and he said, so his word can't be believed. On top of that, the thing that I found really fast, the body horror is obviously there in Front Street, right? This loss of self. But when you pair that with the idea of, as these things happen, right? Because this movie has a scene that I've imagined in my head 1,000 times, right? The baby cam scene, right?
Yes.
Everyone who's had one of those fucking baby cams, they are scary as shit. And so to think about the horrific things that play out in this film, and the way they always punctuate these scenes of horror is the very next scene, people not acknowledging that innocents were dead. Yeah. It's a really good 1-2 punch for me. I quite enjoy how they roll that out in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing I like the most about the lore of it all is, again, I mean, anytime you throw weird pagan symbols up on doors and planks of someone's front yard, I'm absolutely going to be into at least that part for sure. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I mean, I think lore is a great way to put it. That's the thing that really started drawing me in, because once we got past the very beginning, which again starts really quickly, I got really bored with Ben as the main character, Ben, just because I'm I don't give a shit what's going on in this kid's life, and I feel like we're spending a lot of time focusing on this dumbass who has absolutely no idea how to get out of his own way. But then again, like you said, the deeper you go and the more you spend time with the other family and the more you spend time sort of witnessing this rear windowing, the more that not only he is a shithead and he does do some really dumb things, but at the same time he does become much more sympathetic, and it ends up becoming a much more enjoyable movie, but because of him, which literally I did not expect to say at all during this podcast while I was watching this movie. I'd be I could have watched this movie without Ben and still would have gotten the exact same story out of it. But
yeah. Well, they do such a good job, because to me, one of the things that separates really good horror films, and this is not news to anyone, but you have to somehow like the characters or care that they're going to get slaughtered, right? We talked about movies on this. You can call it, the Halloween Resurrection effect or something like that, You're putting all these people in the house,
Perfect.
and why do I want them to not get stabbed? I want them to get stabbed. You're like,
Right.
Busta Rhymes karate kicks Michael Myers. That's one guy I want to live to the sequels. Everyone else, begone, begone with yourself. This movie does a fantastic job at building those little small recognizable moments that are charming without having to bog us down. And because I'm with you, when Ben got to his like, well, I stole some drugs. I stole drugs and I jumped out a window, and I was like,
Yeah,
I don't. Yeah, I was like, I'm not. I liked when it kind of had that, just that almost a Spielbergian, just like kind of kids riding around, hanging out, talking.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, that part's all great, right? Feuding, bullies. I love all this. When he stops and does, well, my parents got divorced, and you know how drugs go. I was like, oh God, here we go. I was like, what is Wretched? Your backstory? Gross. I'm sick of this. But then they find a way back in really cool ways, man. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
But that's the thing. I don't know. Because if you take Ben out as the main character, like it seems like you were talking about earlier, I feel like some of this starts to collapse, right? Because Ben being an unreliable narrator to the rest of the movie somewhat helps it work, right? Because it does transition from this, Rear Window setup, Fright Night setup into Body Snatchers. And if everyone just is like, well, Ben's a real swell guy, right? He's been a cool dude his whole life. That makes that movie a lot harder to roll with. But yeah, so, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on Ben. I thought he did a good job for what he was asked to do in the movie. The thing that really seals this movie for me, right? The neighbor family was so interesting to us because I think we're not old per se, but we're older than we wish we were. We have kids, and I know we all go through this, right? Watching this family of parents who are just trying so hard to be hip with their kids, right? There is something watching that family in particular. I think that's such a good version of this movie, right? Because I think there's a way you write this occasionally where it would become very Stepford Wives. Like, oh, look at the old fuddy-duddy neighbors, right? They have the perfect 3 kids. Oh, now there's only 2. What's happening? You could see that version of the movie. But seeing mom like, let's go hike. I'm going to put on my sexy concert outfit, right? And just doing weird, like there was a weird shot where the director is just like, we should stop and show her peeing in the woods.
Yeah.
I guess for like a second for her and her kid to get separated. But I was like, we're making some weird choices here with these people.
I don't know. Maybe they were on a break and had watched an episode of Girls like, oh, Lena Dunham did it. Everyone should pee on camera.
Everyone knows when there's pee, things get gross. But no, it's so funny though, because that whole thing, right? Like even that sequence, right? That's a good example of what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
When she's just like, oh, the beaten path is not for us. I'm still cool. And you're like, sorry, when all of us hit parenthood, it's like we can try as much as we want, but there's a part about parents who try to be too cool that it almost makes them seem like they're negligent as parents. Like you ever go to a playground and you're like, that kid's wearing like a $150 outfit and brand new shoes that cost more than mine to put sand in them and pretend to eat it. Like it just makes you feel like they're bad people and bad parents.
Yes. I mean, that's exactly what it is though. Like I think that's a strange thing about the movie is that these are like these they are like these tragically hip parents who are trying desperately to hold on to youth, but they're too entrenched. Like they're parents. Like you have 2 kids, I have 1. But at the same time, like, once you get past that threshold of like a year, you realize like, well, this is my life. Like this isn't like one of those things like when you bring the kid home, it's a very fascinating sort of like switch that gets flipped once the kid's born and that kind of thing. But holding on to this youth and like, don't tell your dad we got lost in the woods. Like, all right, so you'd rather stake your claim on being awesome and you found your way out than like, yeah, we almost died, but we're here. It's fine.
No, but it's also like the fact that she's worried about telling the dad who just casually drops, your mom was really whooping it up at Burning Man jokes. I was like, what?
Not only that, but like
your mom just did so many drugs in me at Burning Man.
Probably the first like Rear Window-ish moments we get is like when Ben's It's before anything happens, but it's when Ben is like staring out the window and he sees them in their bedroom and they're getting ready to fuck. Like they're getting ready to get down.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what world do they live in where like their kids aren't just waiting in the wings? Like
no, but ridiculous. That's what happened. I was like, oh, this is a horror film because as soon as he's like mounting, you just hear wee, and I was like, oh Jesus, yeah. Going in to change the diaper at 1 in the morning.
That's the most realistic part. All the preamble beforehand. That's the thing that was true fantasy.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, the Wretched could have just been called, like, the way your kid behaves when it's time to fuck. Like, that's every parent's life. Because you're like, we got 5 minutes before he needs something. Like, that is horrible. But, like, here's a really cool scene they did, right? Because one of the things I think the movie plays on really well with that family is as she's body snatching them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not only just the disappearing of people and it doesn't matter within their family unit, but matters within their self, right? The scenes of her in the shower are classic body horror. And it's everything we fear. It's this loss of... And you layer that on with the parenting, right? Like, oh, I'm just not as hip anymore. Like, there's behavior that is weird. Like, some of the outfits that the witch lady just power walks around in. You're like, why is that in your fucking closet for a child family vacation? You're like, this is a tragically hip family who obviously this stuff really matters a lot, right? Like this, right. But I think that's such a relatable sub-layer to the horror is here is this mom and dad who thought they were these cool freewheeling spirits, whatever. And you see like that red cat suit when she storms over to give the paper back. You're like, how many moms have that in their repertoire? Right. And the fact that the witch picks it, like there's a lot going on there, right? When she's staring in the mirror and the amazing scene where like her eye flesh is loose and she's pulling the teeth out.
She pulls the tooth out. That is just brutal, man.
But here's the scariest part of that scene, right? What's happening to her body is horrifying.
Right.
The next time we see her, she's fully done up with giant fucking Jackie O shades. Yeah. The flowing red,
it's like this flowing summer two-piece. Actually, something honestly my wife would wear. Like, it's really...
But it's got, flowing, like, she looks like she's going to fight Halle Berry's Catwoman outfit. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
She's power walking out there. So that witch is watching this human woman's body decay about her after she has invaded and ruined this woman's life. But she's like, I still got to look good when I walk across the lawn, right? In the middle of fucking nowhere.
In that scene where she's like inspecting herself, the one that I was like, this is amazing body horror. Like, this is amazing makeup work was when she was like trying to pull her arm skin back. It's like starting to just fold up and like curdle almost. I was like, that's another, like, this is a great example of like what they're doing in this movie that no other movie before or like it does is like that kind of stuff. Like those kinds of little bits like that are things like, because it reminds me of something like Contracted and that kind of stuff where someone's slowly changing, falling apart, et cetera, et cetera. But that is like, that's a new level for me because it's less about, oh, that's gross, and more about, oh my God, the horror of what one becomes. It's pretty fascinating.
Right. Well, I mean, I watched this with my own wife. Like, when you see what the human body does to produce another human, you're like, there's probably not a God. There's definitely a satanic force in the world. Like, this is unacceptable way to make more people. It's so scary and horrifying. And people that are like, I saw God in the birth room. It's like, no, maybe Cthulhu. Like, you didn't see, like, the Chad Kroger God that you guys pray to. Like, it's horrifying what happened. And just that whole thought, right? And then, with my wife, we had to go through the course of, like, postpartum and, like, be on the lookout. I actually, I don't know if I should tell the story, but I actually got out of jury duty once in LA because I walked up to the lady and she's like, hey, and I'm like, hey, what's up? I'm just, I'm a little worried. She's like, what's up? I'm like, I'm so excited to be here to pass judgment on another human. I love doing that. I brought my book, right? I brought a fresh bookmark. I got my Starbucks. I'm excited to judge. Like, I love judging. And she's like, well, what's the problem? I was like, I don't know. My wife's eyes, I didn't like it this morning. I left, I was like, she's got the postpartum, and the lady at the jury box was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm terrified that someone else is going to be here to judge my wife as a murderer if I don't go home. And she's like,
you
really?
did
And I
not
was
say
like,
that.
yeah. And I was like, yeah, the doctor told me to be on the lookout. And like, as I was in the Krispy Kreme drive-thru, I knew something wasn't right. And she's like, oh, baby. She's like, you go home, baby. Don't worry about it. And this nice lady, I foisted upon her that my wife was the wretched. I needed it
fucking monster. Oh my God.
Well, because I was like, I don't want to be the classic guy who gets up and is like, oh, I'll just pretend to be another racist white guy to get out of jury duty. I was like, I'd rather be labeled as, oh, look at that heroic dad going to fight his monster wife rather than a racist. But so when I watched The Wretched, I was like, there's like a whole other thing going on for me.
I like that you're going with, well, I look like a hero to all these randos rather than like, I just outed my wife as going through postpartum depression for this whole thing.
Well, okay, well, first off, because I know the reaction people are going to have to that story initially. One, you never want to be the guy who's pretending to be racist ever, right? Like that card might have been cool. No more, right? I'm not a racist. I don't want to pretend to be a racist. None of those people know who my wife is. Over half of them probably looked at me and were like, he never has a wife. He didn't get laid. Right? So like right away, you're like, there's no flack that's blowing back on my wife. When I came home and told my wife, she just rolled her eyes and she's like, it's actually like pretty clever for you. Right? Like, I think she was even like, the stupid things I have done and said at her expense, she's like, that was not that bad. Like she wasn't even mad at me. So I was like, bing, bang, boom. And in case there was something going down, I was there. But yeah, so, but that's what I mean, right? So this poor mom across the street, just in her fucking hip ass clothes, not only did the Dark Mother consume her, right? The fact that the witch is called the Dark Mother too, that kind of gives you a little, little inclination into what's happening. But so she's being accosted from all sides, right? The kids are taking her swag. They've taken her body. They've usurped it. Her husband is kind of falling into this weird, like, transitory, he's like the second Pokemon level of, like, suburban douche dad. Yeah. Because he still thinks he's cool enough. But so, I mean, I thought that was a really fun extra layer, man.
Pretty rough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like this is a classic scene, right? Where she hears something on the baby monitor. It's not the fucking dad that wakes up. She's dealing with it, right? She's taking this on herself. She's losing sleep. She might have to go in and do the feeding. Like, a lot of this stuff is very relatable. But that scene when she sees the baby monitor and that fucking shadow's there, I swear to God, I have had that panic attack 1,000 times. To the point where my second kid, I was like, throw that thing in the fucking trash, and I know myself, I'll just get up and go look. Like, I don't want to have that heart, because you wake up and you just go, ah! You're like, and then you go in and it's like, oh, someone left like a fucking Hulk stuffy, in the chair next to the camera. And in the shadows, it looks like a fucking demon hog coming through the fence. You're like, this is not acceptable. But yeah, that, come on. But see, that's what I mean. You say it might have been a little slow at times, but this movie has the scare moments are fucking on point.
The scares are way better than I think I anticipated them being. Because again, like the movie starts in a very traditional way where it has a little more jumpiness. Like, again, the movie begins like 35 years prior, and that's a whole thing with a babysitter, which, again, I thought was weird. I was like, who walks into a house to babysit and no one's there to, like, greet her? It's a whole thing. But obviously I understand it. But regardless, once the movie, like, really kicks off, like, once the mother gets usurped and things start changing, one child goes missing, the husband gets body snatched, the
scene, right? The scene, because we see the really cool, like, fingers coming out a bunch. Great scene. To me, and I don't know if you agree with this, the scene where you're like, oh, fuck, is when she goes in, her kid is a bundle of sticks, and they go to the low under crib shot, and it's just a pool of blood coming out to her feet. Right? Because even before she gets grabbed, I'm like, at that point, I don't care. But, because this is the thing, they are telling us in this movie, that baby was so scrumptious looking to her, the fucking creature couldn't even drag it back to her tree TARDIS. She's like, I got to munch now, right? That blood coming out does so much work. It's unbelievable.
I'd go even further than that. I'd say the thing that really is haunting, and it's, we've been talking about the baby monitor thing, is they cut back to the baby monitor and the mom getting dragged under the crib. That I was like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, but after you
now.
do like the dead baby, the next thing is not as worrisome to me. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's like you're a grown up getting murdered. That's fine. That pool of blood.
Obviously a baby missing is bad, but
yeah.
I mean, regardless, like that to me is the helplessness. Like when you see that on the monitor, like again, going back to the baby monitor is used to to great effect here, because like when you go back to the baby monitor, when you see that, like the helplessness that occurs is just like you can't do anything. It's just it's already happened. Like I think that's the thing that sucks the most about because we have one of those, and like it's even like connected to my phone. Mm-hmm. The thing that like scares the shit out of me the most is there's a tape delay on it. So like anytime I see something happening, I'm right next door. Like we're right next to the kids' room, but I know it's 2 seconds in the past. Mm-hmm. Like I'm like, oh my God, who the fuck knows? And like a couple of times you hear like bump in the night, and I'm like, holy shit, did you just crawl out of the fucking crib? And I like flip open my phone. And I'm like, why am I even doing it? Like that's the situation where I'd probably fucking jolt and run into the room without looking at it. But like there's moments where you decide to look and you're like, fuck, dude, if he's just not there, we're fucked. Like he's just gone. That means he's on the ground. Like who knows? And that I think is to me the effective use of that nanny cam, whatever it is, is that using that, you see that happen, and you also realize within like the span of maybe 3 seconds, she sees the blood, arms come out, drag her under the crib. Like she has no time to react, but we as the audience have all the time to react, which is the thing that like when you put the whole sequence together, makes it all the more terrifying. It's just everything is out of control.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
But that's what sets the movie off.
Right. And so that scene of horror, right? The description of baby captured, stick bundle, blood, mom. What they do so well, and this is something I think a lot of horror movies miss on this scene, right? The next morning, the dad wakes up, mom's not in bed. He goes down and she's walking around filthy. She's been dragged to the woods. The kid kind of sees it, right? She's out in the woods, we know. Hmm? When she comes back, right, she's like walking around. They do that like gothic, like, you know, her joints are cracking. The Ring does that a lot. Or Ringu. Mm-hmm. She walks back in. Her kid's just eating, getting himself breakfast, eating cereal. She stands behind him. He runs up. He's like, oh, I'm late. Woo! Someone needs a shower. They don't even notice that their mother has been usurped and is covered in mud and blood and is standing. They literally don't stop to recognize what's aware of them. And then you add on to this, which everyone who's a parent knows, it's the morning and you don't hear crying or baby sounds, right? Yeah. Because when you're a parent, silence is the absolute nightmare. Because when you hear them not making sounds, you're like, what the fuck are they doing?
Right, totally.
But that whole scene, right, with almost nothing happening really, it fucking adds 10 times to the depth of horror that you experience as the viewer. Because you're like, everything is so fucking wrong. Now that thing's above another kid. The dad's leaving the house. The baby's gone. We go to the shower. But that's the scene. Because I feel like most horror movies are like, gotcha. And then they're like, all right, now we got to get back to explaining what's happening in this plot. And it's like, you don't need to. I get it. Monsters eating people. I get it. Show me that fucking scene that makes me fucking suffocate in despair. And it makes it makes the next scare more anticipated. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's I love the husband aloofness. Like that to me is like I don't know about you, but that's like quintessential like parenthood stuff. Like I don't know how to say it properly without sounding like my wife and I are like unhygienic, but there's times where I'm like, did I shower yesterday? Like I had those thoughts to myself just because like not only are we like trapped in quarantine and so on and so forth, but also like we're also sitting here going like, we have a fucking 15-month-old. Like he needs all of our attention. So like we sit there and go, did I shower yesterday? Have I done any of the things I'm supposed to do to be a clean person? So when he walked up behind me like, woo, someone smells, like that kind of thing. I'm like, this is like the aloofness of being a parent overwhelms your brain so that it's almost like it shouldn't be excusable. Like any other movie, any other situation, it would not be an excusable thing to like not notice she's like covered in dirt and shit. But because you have a newborn and you have all these other things, you're like, well, of course they didn't notice that shit. Like, who the fuck has time to notice any of that when there's a fucking baby running around screaming? Like, there's a whole other level to that makes that kind of stuff so much more interesting and so much more entertaining through the movie. But you're right. It compounds into this like ultimate fear, like the trueness of fear. And it comes out when like Ben walks over to the house and asks where the daughter is. Like, and that scene to me is one of those, you're like, ew.
Oh, when he asks where the baby is, and the dad's like, I don't have a baby. Fuck you. Or no, his kid, because he missed the boat lesson. He's like, I don't have a son, dude. And the dad does that classic, get the fuck off my porch. It's really funny, right?
I thought about the daughter, because the daughter gets pulled out of that. That little girl gets pulled out of there.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, the son, just having that conversation, like, that's like that, like, it's that extra level of parenting aloofness where you're like, okay, does he really not know? Is he that tired? Like, that's like kind of one of those things. And you're like,
dude. Well, the struggle is so real for parents. I remember once, like, my kid is such a finicky sleeper, and you dared not disturb him. And one time he was in this playing with his crank phase, and so he pulled it out of his little diaper. So in the middle of his nap, he had just fallen asleep, and I just get this hot sensation. I was like, what the fuck? So I kind of rolled just enough to be like, oh, his, crank is just out, not in the diaper. Like, it's sticking out the side, like just the head's out. So just straight up, no diaper filtration, piss all over me. And you're like, but I'm not letting him sleep. So you grab a blanket real quick and tuck it in to soak up the pee. And you're like, I'll just do laundry in an hour. I'll just sit here and cry like I'm Martin Sheen at the start of Apocalypse Now. Like, we all know those moments, right?
Yes.
But what is funny to me, to getting back to that scene when he just openly is like, I don't have a son. That is so fucking scary, right? And then we cut back to Rear Windowing, and they redo the shot where we first meet the family, and the dad's grilling, doing the same dance, but this time without the baby in his arm. And you get the sense that the movie is making a real subtle jab that perhaps his life would be equally as happy without these children. And so that is a scary thought in and of itself, right? So the movie just, it layers on all of these great things. And I think I would say almost the opposite of you, right? Like I was way more in at the start and watching that unfold. I think the movie runs into the thing that a lot of these movies run into, is just eventually you're fisticuffing a witch. And I'm like, that's not the most interesting way to do it. I appreciated the blood sporting the witch. I thought that was great. Just her makeup under the tree, fantastic. But also, you're like, she's an old spirit of the forest. She should have better defenses. But you're like, all right, whatever. It's a cat and mouse game, right? It was amazing before that. We see the dad hang himself, and, there's some really cool shit that happens. But to me, that is where this movie really sings, right? Is that those moments of, I mean, there's so many movies where it's, I'm the one man who knows the truth and no one will believe me. Is just startling. Like that scene, it's such a weird, funny little scene, but when Sara reveals herself because she's having dairy and she just like Gandalf's in the kitchen, I was like, oh, fuck yeah.
I love the little, again, the practical effects, the little flower wilt, like all this other stuff. And like that was a fucking great scene, man. Like, and any other movie, any other way that's been laid out, that becomes, like, in my opinion, horribly corny. Like, almost immediately. Because, it has that, like, Gandalf, boom, boom, bargains. Like, it has that vibe to it. And honestly, I actually just
But then she immediately reduces back to, like, ow, ow.
Yeah. And then, again, that woman is just an incredible actress. Like, her dead eye stare is one for the ages, man. Oh my god.
This cast was stunning.
Like when she's just sitting at the kitchen table while the dad prepares the drink, I'm just like, this is the most terrifying eye. Like it's just like that side eye shot is just like, that's just absolutely horrifying on so many levels.
Yeah, man. I found it fat. There was a great classic scene where I was like, 100% written by a white person. When they just have the cop, like, the kid just steals the cop car and gun and starts laying waste to people. Yeah. And then the movie literally ends, and we don't acknowledge the dead family, dead cop, dead girlfriend. Like, they really treat Sara like she was just some bitch his dad was screwing. At the end of the movie, I was like, we're just not going to acknowledge. Because I was watching it, I immediately, maybe it's just the 2020-ness, but I was like, ooh, dead cop. It was like some more people are definitely getting killed and their faces busted in when this movie's over, right? Like, someone's gonna get it. If I had one gripe with, that was a weird scene too, because the doc dog saves him. But I like that too, because that was an extra fun element of her whispering in the ears, and we get the little blood trickles, so now she has minions. It was really fun the way they laid out her spider web. I dug that. If I had one big criticism, a movie that's this good and this sharp and has such great effects and horror moments, the fact that they didn't find a way to kill the rich white kid is just such a unbelievable missed opportunity.
It's a real miss.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Like, there are many scenarios in which you could have had a very satisfying murder, and it just never materialized.
Seeing that kid not get got was a real bummer to me.
I mean, I guess I get it, just because, you know what? No, I don't. Like, why didn't we do that?
Why is that kid in the movie if not to get got?
Yeah, that's like the whole point of a bully in a movie like this is to get got.
He's also supposed to be the wretched version of our main teen who's a hard-working, just getting by, his family's falling apart. This kid's just over there gelling his hair and has everything. Like, he's the wretched version of our lead. He should be getting got. I was actually, when the movie ended, I was not angry, but I was like, fuck, man, you could have given me an extra 3 minutes. Like, come on. Like, I wanted that scene. I wanted it.
A little slice.
Yeah, that was a bummer.
Can we talk about one of the all-time great, for a $66,000 movie, one of the all-time great visual effects I've ever seen, which is the witch dragging her way out of Sarah's body, which was just like,
so the whole thing with Sara was cool, right? When she gets her head cracked, she has the cool antler mask, right? That's a classic. When she gets her head cracked by the shovel, and the hands are like moving in her neck, and then when she's choking the dad and the hand comes out from the fucking forearm.
So awesome.
Oh, dude. That was one of those, I'm literally like, I sounded like the bonobos at the zoo when I used to go, oh, oh, oh. I'm just watching the TV like hooting because I'm so excited and no one's watching it with me. I have no reaction except, oh, oh, oh. As I'm watching those hands come out, I was like, this is fucking staggering how fucking metal this is. I love. But that's what I mean. They do so many awesome moments with the witch. And when they get to the tree, you gotta pay what that dark mother looks like without the skin. It's fucking good. Yeah. The fucking mushmouth is good. And yeah, I mean, honest to God, that is to me, I mean, if this movie had two things I would really sell as like why it took off. Because everyone involved in this movie did great. But I think that sub-layering of easily bonding characters, right? Like the amount that a viewer can bond to these characters really quick is actually really hard to do, and not very many horror movies pull it off. And then the visual effects are just fucking perfection to me in this movie.
They're awesome. Yeah. I mean,
great.
It's just one of those movies, man. Like, again, for me, and this is the thing I like the most, is like you and I had opposite viewings of it almost, where I had a little bit of a slow start, and then it kicks off immediately for you. And like but we both can agree that the worst thing that they could have done was not kill that rich white. Yeah. And honestly, like at the end of the day, like it didn't affect me either way. It was just like would have been a real sweetener on top, you know. But this,
that's my critique, is that I wanted more movie. Right? That's a great critique. If the worst thing I thought is I want another 5 minutes, that's great.
For a 90-minute movie, that's everything you want. Like, if I'm asking for more at the end, that's exactly, especially for a movie like this, which is, I got to, I mean, everyone by now knows this is not my kind of movie generally, but the fact that I wanted more shows that this thing's got some serious power, man. It has like
my argument is that Nathan, the little brother, so unnecessary. literally adds no value to the narrative, right? The fact that we've already seen him run off to save other kids, the neighbor kid, Lily, he doesn't need to have his own little brother, right?
Well,
it's actually
weird,
more
right?
heroic if it's not his own brother. I get it. It's like a nice little reveal. Oh, there's been a bully here the whole time. And they do a great job, because I remember early in the movie being like, does that kid just have a Godzilla in his room? But then I was like, I have a Godzilla. I'm fucking in my 30s, so it's not that weird. Fuck you. It doesn't have to be a kid's.
That was the thing it was almost like it was this sort of weird borrowed piece from It, because it felt very It in a lot of ways. So it was this weird sort of like borrowed, and then like
If
even
they
more
actually
so, like,
got Georgie back.
going down under the tree and that kind of stuff felt, and of course, getting Georgie back. But
the tree TARDIS,
again, there's not like a whole. It's not anything that like completely dismantles the movie for me. But again, like it's not. It enriches it in the way that it needs to, but never like overpowers the narrative for me. Like,
well, that struck me exactly as screenwriter, maybe low budget director, low budget producer, being like, I'm really worried that we just don't have enough. Oh, this is clever. What if he had a little... It felt like one of those, like, they just were a little unsure of what they had. And I watch it, I'm like, dude, this thing is a fucking sledgehammer piece. Love the fuck out of it. At the end, when they added Nathan and just redid, like, 4 scenes to show us there was a boy here, I was like, that's fine. I want to go kill Macklemore. Let's do that instead, right? Like, I appreciate everything else that's happening. Also, MVP of the movie, the dad. How many movies like this does the dad not fuck his hot girlfriend who just got stabbed, goes outside and says, you know what? My son, who is a piece of shit, steals the drugs, broke his arm, made fun of my girlfriend, got drunk on the night I needed him, gets in trouble at work, blah, 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 blah. I'll at least go check out, see if what he's saying is true. When he walks into that basement and then follows the guy up to the attic, I was like, if nothing else, that is such a cool character moment, because it shows this dad who's lost so much.
Right.
And he cares so much, and he doesn't have to give him the rah-rah speech like, boy, I believe in you. I believe in you, boy, I'll do better. Right? But not really believe it. He actually fucking walks across when the cops were just there for breaking and entering. I was like, that is the best dad move.
I mean, that's like the thing.
So pleased with the dad in this movie, because most of them suck.
How many times? Yeah, I gotta say, like,
say dad is usually run to like comical effects. I love the dad in this movie.
No, this dad's great, and like honestly, we're on this marathon of. I feel like we've watched like 4 or 5 movies now with like dads who are just like total dog shit at parenting. Not just parenting, but just like being present and part of the family in general. They're just like, well, I got to get out of here. I got a big high-powered job somewhere else, anywhere. Bye, gone. Like, it's bizarre, and it's nice. It's nice to see. It's a welcome change of pace.
Well, dude, how were you not shocked though? I mean, obviously, the most shocking scene in the movie was the police officer, for sure. And I have no idea why we saw that water flash earlier in the movie. That felt like he had a dream about it at the start of the film. Yeah. So I was like, did he meet the Wretched on that bus? Like, did he go into the bathroom and go, ew? And it was like, da-da-da, the Wretched. And that's when the boy got eaten? Like, I don't know. Because I was like, why did he see this vision of a cop murdering him, but then having the fortitude to take himself out? Strange. Dock dogs and just a lot of weird stuff happening in that. But other than that, most out of left field scene, right? The weirdest thing to me was the dad actually fucking listened. That never, ever happens in these movies. And it always ends up like, my kid is a piece of shit. I agree with you. Everyone else who's never met him. And then at the end of the movie, as they're sitting there covered in blood and sweat and slime and, you know, ghost demon sperm or whatever's happening in America today, then the dad will go, I wish I would have listened in Act 2. That's how all these movies happen. It was such a pleasant surprise.
Welcome change of pace.
Yeah. Now, Alex, at the end, do you think the girl with the best socks was usurped? Because we see the car smash, but we don't see the Vavitch getting it.
Yeah.
She goes to therapy and looks forlorn at the thought of the burning tree, hiding it maybe. We don't see her sister again.
I mean...
And then the fake flower.
I mean, I guess if I'm really thinking about it...
And what does he smell in that fake flower? Does he smell nothing? But that's what I mean. She's also rowboating a bunch of kids out at dusk.
If I'm really thinking about it, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Because, hey, this is that's a fantastic setup for a sequel. But, yeah, probably.
I was like, me. But I would feel sad. I like that kid. I don't want that kid to get wretcheded. Also, because then I'm like, wait, so he kissed Mushmouth? Like, he went in and he's like, that's for me, baby. She's like, I'll be eating children again in 1 hour. I just ate tongue and now I'll eat more kids. I don't know why she laughs like Meredith Burgess Penguin or whatever.
What is that? What is that Burgess Meredith Penguin?
I thought that's how witches laughed. It's not impressions I'm working on. I'm working on my impressions. But yeah, I think that is see, that's one of those things you add at the end that to me doesn't need to be there, but is a really sweet stylistic punch to the journey we've just had, right? So I like the idea that is the Wretched. I think the staring right down the barrel of the camera is usually a bad sign. That's usually an ominous, foreboding sign.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's almost always that way. So to me, I mean, it happened, without question.
Yeah.
Especially because of that kind of thing.
I just found this movie so exciting. They hang a dead baby and a dead dog on me, but it didn't feel oppressive. Because normally movies that have, and it's always white people killing dogs. I don't know what this is. It really pisses me off more than anything in the movie. This one, the dog almost felt like a spirit, a familiar. I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever. It's fine. Weird stuff's happening. It's all right. But that's not, this movie never felt oppressive, but also fucking terrified me to the core.
Yeah.
The scares were good. The practical effects were as good as any movie I've seen in the last fucking decade. I mean, it's amazing.
I mean, I think that
music, actors, across the board, it's a pretty stunning achievement.
The thing you take away from this movie is that these guys wanted to make this movie and they made it exactly as they wanted to make it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to the power of when you have your backs against the wall, especially in the horror genre. Horror movies do this better than any other genre of we have no money. How are we going to do this? So
yeah,
it's a great example of your back against the wall and leaning into your narrative. And that to me is what makes this movie worthwhile. The practical effects, the acting, all that stuff is, just toppings on top of this sundae of a wonderful narrative that is just absolutely, truly kind of gripping. It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the fact that the director obviously got the actors where they needed to be, the writer put in all these extra thoughts into the lore and all these cool little signs. The fact that everyone got this movie on that budget to where it needed to be, and it actually was able to break through because we don't have this fucking deluge of kind of big studio, pappy crap. We're not getting the Valentine's Day movie with 45 actors, whatever. It's just nice that a movie like this of such craft hit right at the moment when it could find the audience it needed to, man. And I think this is one of those that will rise above. But that's what I mean. I've seen a lot of these movies. I watched one recently, The Devil's Doorway. I was like, this is a really fucking good movie. And you just kind of feel like it's going to be gone, right? It'll just, guys like us, maybe some people will do some pods. Some people will write some reviews. But the sad fate of a lot of this stuff is it just disappears in the rush, right? And that in and of itself becomes scary when you watch this movie and we're all disappearing. And our photographs are getting scratched out and shit. But yeah, I think it's just such a... The fact that it's this movie of this caliber craft that got through really fucking makes me stoked. It's probably one of the few good things of 2020.
No, it's exactly what it is. It's the benefit of this movie is that it comes at a time where we all were forced to slow down. And I think that that's probably the more important thing above all is that we're forced to slow down and notice these great pieces of art that maybe we wouldn't this is on Hulu. obviously you should rent it if you feel so
Pay
inclined
for
to
that.
watch this.
Pay for that, though. This one deserves your money.
Yeah, pay for this movie. But like more importantly, like this is the kind of stuff that gets like flung to video on demand and doesn't see a big audience. This movie needed a big audience, and it got one at least for a little bit. And I think that's a big deal. And that's also the reason that, 2020 is a fucking shit show. But The Wretched, I'll take it.
And maybe some movies like this start reviving things like the drive-in and maybe smaller, more curated stuff as we're looking at ways to maybe reboot our movie-going experience. Yes. I am just so thankful that 2020 gifted us this little fucking horrific gem. I'm glad we got to do an episode on it finally. Over the next couple weeks leading up to October, guys, we're doing a horror movie every month, God help us. We're going to start dropping. I've seen some really awesome video on demand stuff. So we're going to start dropping some of these and try to sing the praises of some of these movies like The Wretched. Mm-hmm. So yeah, stay tuned for that, guys. As always, leave us a rating and review. Please subscribe. Share us on your socials. Subscribe to the YouTube channel Nerd Alchemist. We'll be back on Thursday. Back to our monthly theme. The Pod's Evil Spawn with The Good Son, which is just gonna be a fucking buffet of awesome things to talk about. So stay tuned for that. Please get at us with any suggestions, things like that. And most of all, thanks for listening, guys. For the Film Alchemist, I'm Griffey.
I'm Alex Dandino.
You know what you should have done? You should have made a showering sound effect, and I could have whipped the hair.
Maybe I could do. Is that good? A munching sound effect?
That just sounds like that WAP video.
Ooh. Very cultured here.